All right, welcome back. I'm doing a live reading of my memoir, Rebirth, and I'm reading chapter 30. So if you just stumbled upon this video, make sure to go back to the beginning. I've been reading chapter by chapter. There's a playlist so that you can go in sequence. Make sure to do that so that you know what's going on. Because if you're just happening here, there's an avalanche coming. We're in the final stretch. So I encourage you to start at the beginning. If you like my story, please please share it so that it reaches the people who are meant to hear it. Make sure you subscribe. And I talked a little earlier about the villains in your story, giving yourself permission to be the hero of your story because you are the hero of your story. In part, this is really what it's about. Even though some people are playing the villain in my story, I don't think of them as villains in a broad sense. We're all things. We can be the villain in one part of a story and the hero in another part of that same story. So something that I think we need to greatly understand. In any case, thank you for being here. Please be sure you've subscribed, like, share. Chapter 30, final stretch. It's entitled E.S.M.A, E.S.M.A. I woke up buzzing, my mind racing with energy, my mind racing as new connections and insights that could not be mere coincidence came to me. I felt an uncontainable zest for life that made sleep feel impossible. There was too much to share. I reached for my laptop, fingers flying across the keys. Subject, you won't believe this. Evelyn, Sarah, Mira, Ann has the acronym E.S.M.A. I typed to my brother, fueled by excitement, and guess what? The girl's name, E.S.M.A, is a variant of Amy. It was wild. It had to mean something. I could feel it in my bones. We had picked a girl's name, Emily. But when his wife chose the same name for their daughter, I let it go. And yet, here we are, unable to escape it. We just cannot get away from calling her the same name as your daughter's name. How cool is that? My heart was pounding. I knew I should be resting, but how could I rest when my mind was lit up like a constellation? I felt connected to everything and everyone. Oh, okay. I know I'm supposed to be off email for 2 weeks. I'm being bad, but I just really wanted to share this with you. I hit send and leaned back, a mischievous grin spreading across my face. I was trying to stay away from messages, to let myself rest, but the world felt too alive right now, too full of meaning to keep it all inside. I wanted to share what was waking up inside me. It had been almost a week since the emergency visit for the gush of blood, and my pads were still soaked in red. And despite the doctor's suggestion, I hadn't felt any contractions. I was worried my uterus still completely contra- con- hadn't contracted completely, and I didn't want to wait for another episode before seeking help. Can you drive me to women's college? I asked Matto. It was where Evelyn was born, and they had her birth records. I packed the hospital gown and swaddle blankets we took after Evelyn's birth to return them. You should have come here the last 2 times you went to emergency, the triage nurse said. I nodded in full agreement. The first time was at night, and our midwife told us they were closed that night, I explained. Her eyes shot up to Matto, briefly scanning his face before looking back at me. We're only closed for walk-in patients. Women who gave birth here can come in at any time. Your midwife should know this, since she deals with women's college. My chest tightened. You should have known. She should have known, I repeated to myself. Those words were intimately familiar lately. I took a deep breath, trying to release the rising tension. There were so many things they should have known. We also told the medic in the ambulance during the last emergency, but he said they had to follow switchboard instructions. She shook her head. The ambulance should have brought you here. Her index finger moved downward and hit the desk. My face tightened with each word. I took another deep breath, leaning back in the chair to help me relax. I agreed with her wholeheartedly, but it was out of my control both times. No one was listening, and my attempts to be heard just made me just made me seem crazy. The nurse instructed us to take a seat in the waiting area. I removed the baby gown and blankets from my bag and placed them on one of the side tables. When called in, the nurse directed me to the red chair on the other side of the large automatic doors. They slid open, revealing a large red leatherette recliner in the middle of the hallway facing the emergency area. It looked like a sofa taken right out of Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Before I could comment, another nurse appeared, introduced herself, and asked to check my pulse and take blood samples. I turned my arm, revealing bruises from last Sunday's needles and IV. Her head jerked back before she joked, "Can no one get any blood out of you?" And once again, I felt the needle burn. Was the pain and bruising from a lack of blood? I didn't usually have issues with nurses taking blood samples, and needles generally didn't hurt more than a slight prick. We were then asked to wait in room 8 on the other side of the area. It was a large private room with a heavy self-closing door. The bed was against the far wall. I made myself comfortable on the bed when my phone rang. It was my Aunt Sylvie. I answered since I was just waiting anyway and told her about the adventure since Evelyn's birth. I was laughing on the phone when the obstetrician came in. I immediately told my aunt I had to go, but the nurse told Meryl she would be back. I hung up and watched the door close behind her. A wave of panic washed over me. The phone call might have been costly. 5 hours passed before a male doctor came in, followed by a female nurse, and informed us that he was now the doctor in charge. The nurse followed him to the foot of the bed, not next to me as usual, but at his side, as if they were a team. The doctor slid on gloves and asked me to lie down, legs apart, for an examination. Something felt wrong, a flicker of unease crawling up my spine, but I pushed it aside and lay back, staring at the ceiling tiles. The fluorescent light hummed. "Tell me if this hurts," he said, inserting his finger. He applied pressure in various areas as in any other pelvic exam. I held my breath, waiting for it to be over. Then something changed. Instead of exerting pressure, his finger now moved back and forth in a way that felt wrong. I tensed, my breath catching in my throat, bracing myself through the discomfort. It would all be over soon. His fingers kept on stroking the same area. My heart pounded. What should I do? My eyes locked on the nurse. Maybe she would say something, but she watched his actions, her face locked with the same stern expression and arms crossed over her chest. I swallowed hard, willing myself to be still, more patient. I felt suspended in a moment that refused to end. My body shot up in one swift motion. I pushed his hand away and turned to the nurse. "Can I ask for another doctor?" My voice was sharp, barely masking the tremor beneath. The nurse's face contorted. "What do you mean?" she snapped, as if I'd just accused him of murder. The doctor removed his gloves, his face a mask of unreadability. "If you didn't trust me, you should have said so before the examination." My stomach turned, but I didn't know before it started. Her face tightened as she leaned in towards me, as though ready to confront me. Confused, I continued, this time my voice pleading. "I just want to know if I have the right to see another doctor." The nurse raised her voice. "You should have said something before the examination started." Then the doctor added, "You must leave the hospital immediately." They were both shouting, their voices blurred together, loud and jarring, my body frozen. My body in frozen surrender to the confusion. They moved towards the door, turned and exited the room in single file, the same way they had come in. The walls of the room closed in, my hands trembling. I pulled on my pants, frantic to get myself out. "We should come back tomorrow morning when he's no longer on duty," I told Meryl. He left the room while I finished dressing. When I opened the door, he was at the desk in the center of the brightly lit main area, talking to the doctor. He turned towards me and said, "I'm leaving our paperwork from the previous 2 emergency visits." "No," I shouted, my voice louder than I intended. "I don't want to leave them. There are papers." The doctor asked if they could make copies. I agreed, and then left the hospital. Later that evening, Mato sat on the bed beside me, hunched over, sobbing. He hesitated to tell me what was wrong. Evelyn was asleep beside me, such a joy to witness. Eventually, he turned towards me. His lips quivering, he said, "I think you have postpartum depression." What? My head recoiled in disbelief as I tried to understand his reasoning. I wasn't depressed, not even a little. I had never been so happy. I knew what depression felt like. I was familiar with it. This was not it. This was completely different. This was elation, adoration, floating on a cloud of surrender, love, and beauty. Everything was perfect. I just lacked support, acknowledgement, or basic compassion. Then he said he didn't think it was depression. He thought it was psychosis because I was seeing things. "I'm not imagining things that don't exist, Mallow," I snapped. "I'm hearing from God. I saw my grandparents, something I believe is possible. Many years ago, when my grandfather passed away, I was certain I heard him laughing with his son, who had passed away at a very young age. I knew they were reunited, happy, knowing the truth at last. It wasn't out of character for me to experience something like this, nor was hearing God or the Holy Spirit or feeling a presence in the room that I knew was God. We agreed to call Sarah about it. She seemed a little reluctant at first, given that we had ended their service a few weeks ago. It wasn't that I no longer wanted support, but I couldn't face Amy. I was traumatized by my experience with her and preferred she not be on my midwifery team. I was fine with Sarah and Evelyn, but they honored a code of no midwife left behind. Ending the service, in that sense, wasn't my choice. Either Amy was included or I couldn't have a midwife team at all. Fortunately, Sarah was willing to listen to our concerns about postpartum psychosis. She explained to Mauro that religion is excluded from the term hallucinations and that visions of a spiritual nature are fine. She also explained that postpartum depression is a type of depression. "It's the same animal," she clarified, "not a different one. It might be a different color, but you'd recognize it, given your history with depression. If you're feeling happy, not depressed, you should know the difference." She ended the call by reminding us that they were no longer available to us because of our decision not to include Amy. I wasn't in full agreement, but I also couldn't face Amy. For the time being, I needed to forget she existed. Hanging up the phone, I felt both sadness and relief. I was certain I didn't have postpartum depression or psychosis. However, Mauro's face told a different story. He remained unconvinced. He disliked the idea that religion was protected and didn't see how religious belief or lack thereof made any difference. But for me, a believer in God, it made all the difference. Witnessing Mauro's hardened heart was disheartening. Why couldn't he at least accept the possibility? He didn't have to believe, only to accept that I did. What hurt most was his disbelief in me, which only widened the divide between us further. In the days that followed, I began to wonder if he might have postpartum psychosis. Perhaps witnessing the birth and its aftermath was more traumatic for him than I realized. He likely experienced far more powerlessness than I did. I genuinely believe that postpartum depression, anxiety, and psychosis stemmed from this feeling of powerlessness, the inability to protect your baby or family, and the loss of freedom of choice. This is a rarely discussed reality of parenthood, how your basic human freedoms don't extend to your child, who becomes, in essence, the property of the state, protected or controlled as the state deems fit until they reach maturity. This was a devastating realization. I understood the necessity of protecting children in abusive situations, but the notion that anyone other than the child's parents inherently knows what's best for that child was absurd and destructive. A concern that seemed largely unaddressed. Instead, when a mother experiences mental health issues due to those feelings of powerlessness, medication is the immediate solution. Even our friends were convinced I was experiencing psychosis and suggested I be medicated. And that is the reading of chapter 30 of my memoir, Rebirth. Please subscribe, like, and share. Leave comments. Let me know you're here. Give me feedback. Send me your questions. I'm so glad that you're here and listening along. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day.